The one thing that could not happen to Nebraska on Saturday, it did.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download today.
Hi, everybody. It's Sunday. We're recording this as our reaction podcast for the weekend. Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you, coming off of Nebraska's 30-27 loss to Michigan. They fall to 3-1 on the still young season, but 0-1 in Big Ten play. Quick stats, first of all, and we have so many things to react to during this show. Michigan runs it for 286 on Nebraska. Nebraska ends up running for 43 total, but that the sack total really racked up there for Raiola. He took 49 yards in sacks. So Nebraska,
92 yards. Yeah, 92 yards.
The total was 92 from the running game, but 43, which doesn't do a lot for your run game averages during the season. So I will say, that's one of the first stats that everybody looks at, 286 to 43 on the ground. And I don't know if that's like completely representative of how bad it was for Nebraska, but they certainly did not control the line of scrimmage in this game. And that's at least the start of the story, Mitch.
It's a big part of it. I don't want to go back too much and dwell on the epiphany that I had in the gas station the other day about how Nebraska had to either break even or win one of the areas at the line of scrimmage. And if it lost both, then that was bad news. Nebraska didn't just lose both sides of the line of scrimmage. It lost both sides in a big way.
Badly.
And we're not necessarily talking about just the run game for Nebraska in finding evidence that Michigan won the battle of the line of scrimmage when Nebraska was on offense, because I think there's a good argument to be made that Nebraska's run game really extends beyond handing the ball off. And a lot of the short passes that you see and that Dylan Raiola is very good at are an extension of the Nebraska run game. And there was a lot of success that he had there. He threw for 308 yards. First quarterback against Michigan to throw for 300 yards since Aiden O'Connell of Purdue in 2022. First to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns against Michigan since Stetson Bennett in the college football playoff in 2021. So there's some things to take away from that, and some of that is connected to the Nebraska run game. But the 7 sacks is part of the line, is a big part of the line of scrimmage on the offensive side for Nebraska. And then the 286 for Michigan. Like, look, you can break it down and you can say Michigan got 166 of that 286 on 3 plays. So you take that out, and it's 120 yards on 30 carries, 4 yards per carry. Not bad. Nebraska didn't do a bad job against Michigan, aside from 3 plays. Well, those 3 plays produced 21 points, so that's pretty significant.
Yeah, those 3 plays were a pretty big deal. I mean, Michigan had, 4 plus 7. So they had 11 explosives, quote unquote, in this game. Seven rushes that totaled 221 yards. Seven rushes that totaled 221 yards, a 37 to 75 and a 54 that you mentioned, but also an 11 to 13 to 19 and a 12. And a lot of that was on that last soul-sucking third down converting drive for Michigan, where Nebraska just could not get off the field. So they got the right plays and the right moments for sure.
We'll get to that drive. Do you know Nebraska's longest rush play when it came?
It was the first play from scrimmage, right?
It was the first play of the game. Emmett Johnson over the left side for a gain of 14. And you're thinking, okay, Nebraska's going to hold up. That was the longest play on the ground for Nebraska all day.
Ouch, tough. So yes, I think that's the story of this one. They got beat at the point of attack. There's no doubt about it. Specifically, Nebraska's tackles against Michigan's rush edges. Barham is
He's really good.
Really good
First round
player.
pick.
And he was eating Teddy Prohaska's lunch all day. Gatula was getting beat up on the edge as well. At one point, Nebraska went to Elijah Pritchett. He false started. Controversially, he false started, but he false started,
Yeah,
So,
I didn't get that call. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
I didn't get that call. The officials said that he was not drawn off. He was not drawn to jump by the Michigan player who came across the line of scrimmage.
on the other side of the line of scrimmage.
But you can see the other side of the line. And,
Yeah. And replay showed that he saw it. I mean,
it really saw it. I could
Yeah.
see, I could tell. So I think that is a bad call, that 5-yard penalty against Elijah Pritchett, which we probably wouldn't even bring it up, but it's going to be a talking point because both times now that he's gotten into a game and Nebraska's tried to rely on him, he's gotten flagged for a false start. The first one, of course, was at the 1-yard line against Cincinnati. This one, a lot more forgivable because of the situation and the fact that, well, it's a judgment call. Like, it's like, well, he wasn't impacted by that guy. That honestly, that shouldn't matter. I get it if it's like a DB, coming into the neutral zone or something like that, like way out on the edge, but the line of scrimmage is the line of scrimmage, and you can see that in your peripheral vision. Anyway, that's enough time about Elijah Pritchett. But
it's interesting that on the drive they went to Pritchett on, he's in the middle of a false start, situation. Mm-hmm. So right. I mean, that's on brand, at least for him so far this year. And I don't think we saw him after in the rest of the game after that. So let's go through a couple things here. First drive. I mean, this game rode crazy waves of back and forth sort of roller coaster emotions and who had momentum and stuff like that. I mean, it went pretty dang well for Nebraska on their first drive of the game. They go for it on fourth down, and they go for it on fourth down of the first possession. And
4th and 2 at the 6.
Yeah, they throw that little shovel up to Lindenmeyer. He reaches across. They didn't get it. Are you okay with that decision?
Totally. And I asked Rule about it after the game, and he immediately went to the analytics, which I don't think is necessary because I think that
for me.
Yeah, I think that takes away from the feel part of it. And in the feel, you have to understand who your opponent is and who you are, and that might indicate that it's a poor time to do it because Michigan is stout at the line of scrimmage and Nebraska has struggled this year in short yardage, especially at the goal line. All that said, I'm all for going for it. And it didn't even really hurt Nebraska all that much in the moment. Yeah, it hurt them in that they didn't score a touchdown on that possession, but Nebraska hands the ball to Michigan. It's forced to punt out of its own end zone. It's a terrible punt that bounces backwards, and Nebraska gets right back in a position to kick a field goal, which is where the Huskers would have been if they would have chosen not to go for it in the first place on fourth down. And they missed a field goal. They missed a short field goal. It was 40 yards or just over 40 yards. And Kyle Cunanan has to make that kick. You put Nebraska up 3-0, and it's a wash at that point.
Yeah.
So
for the portion of the game, which was early, the first 5, 6, 7 minutes of the game, where Nebraska looked like it was in control, they got no points out of it, and that's the part that hurts.
That's
so I understand for the fourth down, the kick, take the points on fourth down people on the first drive. Like, it's hard for the go for it people to win the argument because you have the results on your side. Nebraska lost by 3 points, and they didn't get any points out of those first.
Stop with that.
To those people, 4 offensive possessions. Yeah, they didn't get points to the 5th drive when Cunanan made the field goal. That Raiola threw the pick on the 3rd drive. So they wasted that entire first quarter or so where they felt like they were in control, and ultimately Underwood broke one.
I didn't love the offensive start for Nebraska in the sense that, and Matt Rule said this after the game about how we weren't out there to try to trick them. It felt to me like, and Nebraska had some success, but it felt to me like Nebraska's script, the first possession in particular, they were trying to trick Michigan. It was a lot of like designed plays for Dylan Raiola to get outside the pocket. And we've heard Holgorsen talk at length this offseason and early in the season about how Nebraska needs to master the routine plays. And we've heard Matt Rule say he doesn't want Dylan to be a quarterback who has to wow you. He wants him to be able to stand in the pocket and deliver the ball. And they've been very good at that. And maybe they had this preconceived notion that Michigan was going to heat him up early and they had to do things to get him outside the pocket. But I thought that set a little bit of a tone on both sides of the ball that Nebraska didn't feel like it could play straight up with Michigan, even though it was getting yardage on that first possession. There were a couple plays on that first possession that almost resulted in turnovers. There was one play where Nebraska almost turned it over twice on the same play. And it was fortunate that it went as an incompletion. But I didn't love honestly, the game plan for Nebraska at the beginning. And I thought Nebraska was almost deserving to end up with 0 points out of those first two drives or first two possessions, just because you didn't get the sense that Nebraska was confident it could go toe to toe with Michigan.
With all that, with all the ups and downs, after Michigan sort of, grabs control in the second quarter of that game, Nebraska goes into the half tied at 17 because they get an absolute gift from Biff, who, could have easily taken a timeout and made Nebraska just punt it with 20 plus seconds left. And they let him roll it down. Nebraska takes a timeout with 1 second, get a Hail Mary. And all of a sudden it's like, whoa, hang on. What are we dealing with here? It's 17-7. You felt like that was a huge win for Nebraska. And then coming out of the gate in the second half, they weren't able to take advantage of it anyway. But still, even after all that, the cat and mouse game and how Nebraska sort of fell behind physically in the second quarter, you still went into halftime tied at 17.
Yeah. It was a huge momentum boost for Nebraska to get that 52-yard pass from Dylan Raiola to Ja'Cory Barney at the half, because Nebraska didn't match up physically against Michigan real often in the first half of that game. We talked about the beginning sequence, and then there was the 75-yard run by Justice Haynes. As soon as Nebraska evened the score, there was a big sigh of relief when Nebraska hit the touchdown pass from Raiola to Barney to make it a 10-10 game. And that was a great throw.
Barney set that drive up with a nice punt return too.
He did. Great punt return. I made the comment in the press box that I thought it was the best punt return in years that Nebraska's had. It was a 20-yard punt return, but he fielded it on a bounce. And then he made about 3 guys miss to get 20 yards. And as you said, the field position was good. And then Ja'Cory comes through on the other end of it with a nice catch on a ball that Dylan just dropped in a bucket for a 26-yard touchdown. So you're thinking, okay, hey, they weathered the storm. Michigan came out and delivered a big punch, made it 10-0. Nebraska comes back. It's even at 10. And then boom, 75 yards for Justice Haynes on the first play. Like, he might be the best back in the Big Ten. I think he is the best back in the Big Ten. No, you don't think so?
He's the biggest home run threat in the Big Ten, maybe.
Who's better? One of the Penn State guys?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, he's got speed to burn for sure. And he did that against Oklahoma on the first play of the third quarter. And he did it to Nebraska, 75 yards untouched. All 3 of Michigan's long touchdown runs were untouched. But yeah. And then the Hail Mary happens to kind of even things. Let's come back after we take a break and talk a little bit about that sequence at the end of the first half for Nebraska, and then what could have happened and what did happen in the third quarter to kind of switch momentum up. That's coming next. Okay, a message right now from the Game Cap. Got a quick question for all of you college football fans out there. If you could go back in time and sit in the front row at your school's biggest rivalry game, what hat would you be wearing? Yeah, I said hat. What hat for Nebraska or for maybe your team in another sport? What hat would you be wearing? For me, it would be the game. These are not just hats. They're the same vintage style that fans wore back in the 80s and 90s. And guess what? They still go for the same price they did back then. When you use the code Locked On, you will get your vintage hat for $16.99. We've had some sent to us. I can tell you, they do look like the hats from the 80s and the 90s in the case of Nebraska. Head to thegamecaps.com. Grab your team's classic bar or retro circle design and use the code Locked On for an exclusive discount, because legends wear the game. All right, we're back. Reaction to Nebraska's 30-27 loss Saturday at Memorial Stadium against Michigan. Let's just say at the beginning of this game, in the hour or so before this game, as Memorial Stadium filled up and the sideline filled up, and you had the 1995 Huskers there, and Bud Crawford led Nebraska out of the tunnel. CBS in the building, the classic music playing on TV, Brad Nessler, Gary Danielson in the booth. Whoa, man. This thing had some juice on Saturday.
They had a great, I wasn't there. I watched it on TV. They had a great broadcast open and great aerial shots of the stadium and downtown and that entire thing. It felt massive. It felt gigantic. So yes, that part of the box was checked for sure.
So from that standpoint, you could say missed opportunity for Nebraska. All you had to do was win the game because everything else was set up to make this a program defining kind of day. And if you look at this game through a certain lens and you see that Michigan gifted Nebraska a touchdown, as we referenced earlier, Biff Poggi could have called a timeout, should have called a timeout with 12 to 15 seconds left on the clock when it was 4th and 1 for Nebraska at the end of the first half. That would have ensured that Nebraska punts it away. Instead, he doesn't call a timeout. Matt Rule lets it run down to 1 second, calls the Hail Mary. Nebraska hits it. It's a touchdown. And there you have a huge momentum swing. So what a moment for Nebraska. There was also a penalty called on Michigan late in the third quarter when the Wolverines had ended a Nebraska drive with a third down stop, 3rd and long. It was like 4th and 17. Huskers were going to come on and punt already down.
And they were running on fumes by that point. I mean, this was gifter. I don't even know. It was taunting, and they showed it on the CBS pylon cam. Like, why? What in the world was that guy doing? I have no idea.
So it was a clear taunt, like it was bad. It deserved the flag.
Straight up to Nebraska's sideline and started, dancing and
gyrating. Good, I like that. You're watching on YouTube. Take that moment right there from Connor and make it into a meme. So Nebraska then takes the ball. Dylan Raiola hits 5 consecutive throws after the taunting penalty. Huskers kick a field goal to make it a 1-possession game on the first play of the fourth quarter, and they're back alive. So Michigan gift wraps some stuff for Nebraska. I don't look at this game through the lens of saying that Nebraska missed opportunities. Another missed opportunity for Nebraska was the Isaiah Hunter in the back of the end zone. He runs out of bounds, not pushed out of bounds, not forced out of bounds, just runs out of bounds. And then comes back in and catches the ball from Dylan Raiola. Would have been a 20-yard touchdown, but easy call for the officials. Illegal touching. So Kinnanen kicks the field goal. You take 4 points off the board there, plus the 3 to 7 points that Nebraska lost on the opening possession. You go, okay, they left 11 points on the field. You lose by 3. That's a missed opportunity. You had it right in front of you. But I asked you this question before we started taping today. Do you feel like Nebraska was closer to winning this game or losing it by the score of 41-14?
Yeah, I think that they were. I think they were closer to winning it.
But I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's definitely the type of game that drastically can change outcomes on, what do they always say, 6 to 8 plays or 8 to 10 plays or something like that. Like totally, 100%. Nebraska didn't get a couple to go their way. Michigan didn't get a couple to go their way. So yeah, if the Hail Mary isn't completed before half, or they call a timeout, or if the guy doesn't get a taunting penalty, or if they take that back for a pick 6 instead of just a pick on Raiola's interception, yeah, that you could really get it racking up there for Michigan. At the same time, given how it turned out, Nebraska had their chances in this one, and then you start, you lose by 3 and you start picking apart all of the little stuff. If you're Michigan and you lose that game, you would have been thinking, wow, oh my goodness, how did we lose that game? We controlled it, we dominated. But how many times have we said that with Nebraska over the years? Where it's like, oh my God, how did that happen?
Nebraska has lost that game in Michigan's position
that
before.
Stuff happens often in college football. So they had a crack.
Some of us in the media were down on the apron of the field by the end zone in the northwest corner at the end, and we left the press box with the idea that the game was over because it was 30-20 and Nebraska was stalling, was trying to drive, but there were 3 minutes left when the Huskers had the ball. And then we saw them score, and okay, there's about 1:50 to go, and they're going to try an onside kick. And like Matt Rule articulated in the postgame, if Nebraska had been able to corral that onside kick, you felt pretty good about the Huskers' chances to win the game, not just to force overtime. You don't want overtime, but to go down and for Dylan Raiola to get 6 there at the end. I think they would have done it, and they weren't all that far from getting the onside kick. Carter Nelson, I believe, was the guy in position to do it, and they went out behind the Michigan hands team specialist instead of in front of him. But onside kicks they're tough. They're a crapshoot. You can't say what if. The comment that we made there, I was talking to Max Olson from ESPN, my former colleague, friend of the show. And Max said, could you imagine if Michigan dominates this game, but completely botches the final minute of both halves and loses as a result?
Be a hell of a way to bookend the groin kick era, right? It would be over at that point. Nebraska would win a game in the exact way, or the other team across the field would lose a game in the exact way Nebraska had lost all of those games over the last 10 or so years now. That would have been an amazing story to write, but not to be yesterday.
Not to be. Yeah. All right. What about the drive in the fourth quarter? Michigan gets the ball. It is 27-20, 12 minutes and 40 seconds left in the game. The Wolverines at that point were 1 for 9 on third down. Despite those 3 long runs, Nebraska had done a nice job of limiting third down conversions. Underwood was largely a non-factor with what he was doing with his arm. He was not carving up the Nebraska secondary by any stretch. So you get to 3rd and 5 from the 38. Michigan's 1 of 9 on third down. 3rd and 5 from the 38. Underwood to Samaj Morgan for 6 yards. 3rd and 9 from the Michigan 45. Underwood to Justice Haynes for 16 yards. 3rd and 10 now from the Nebraska 39. They're just trying to get a couple yards to be able to kick a field goal because their field goal kicker's got a cannon for a leg. He's already made one from 56. Haynes rushes for 19 to get to the 20. That's 41 yards on 3 third down plays in a drive that took nearly 9 minutes off the clock, covered 88 yards, ends with a chip shot field goal with 3:46 to go. Just completely took the steam out of everything at that moment.
This is why Nebraska had to, on this game in particular, they kind of had to play from ahead. It just Michigan has
never had the lead. Nebraska never had the lead. Yeah.
They want to be the type of team, and they are obviously capable of being the type of team who just, smothers you, just sits on top of you, So if they're playing with a lead,
ask Ohio State.
Yeah, they are completely comfortable. They are in their own element, and they feel like, all right, well, we can run our quarterback and we're pretty good in the traditional run game anyway. With that being said, Nebraska gets them to third down 3 times, and people are sitting there pulling their hair out. But this, if Underwood is forced to throw the ball downfield in that situation, the roles are reversed and Nebraska has the lead, then, it's a little bit more one-dimensional. And instead on those plays, it was the first one was a pass. The second one was a pass, and the third one was just like, this pretty simple handoff, because
they were trying to get in better position for the field goal.
Yeah, they could have taken the field goal anyway, and instead he got 19. Nebraska's they're stunting and twisting up front. There's going to be holes. I knew going into this game, this is more of a general picture now. Like I knew going into this game that they were going to bust a couple runs. It was just something that you were going to have to live with because they're at a disadvantage physically up front. And so they have to do all these different things with movement along the defensive line. And there's just going to be some guys out of position at some point. And it was a factor in the biggest moments of the game right there on that drive, and that's because Nebraska wasn't in control of the football game. Michigan was.
You saw some missed tackles on those third down plays as well. That and in part credit Michigan for having the toughness and the resolve to break tackles, and they wear teams down. Matt Rhule wasn't having any of that. I asked him if the physicality perhaps was a factor. It's the fourth quarter at that point. It's a long drive. And he said, no, our guys are well conditioned. That's a matter of focus and being in the right place and getting off blocks and making tackles. But I do think that at that point in the game, Michigan had its physicality had taken some kind of a toll on Nebraska. And at least part of the reason that Nebraska didn't make those plays on third down was because of the nature of the game.
Well, I think you have a big point in your category because they had to take a timeout. Nebraska took a defensive timeout after they converted that third down and said, we are gassed. We are getting killed right now. So we
to
feel
reorganize. Something.
Yeah, we have to settle down. So yeah, absolutely. And they could have used that timeout, driving back later.
Okay, let's take a break, come back, talk about what went right. There were some bright spots for Nebraska and how they can possibly fix the situation that ended up with Dylan Raiola getting sacked 7 times in this game, because there's a long Big Ten season ahead. That is next.
But first, a word from our friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Yes, the NFL season is here. In fact, if you're listening to this on Sunday, it's very likely that the NFL is going on right in front of your face right now. So fear not. You can go to the FanDuel app, and new customers can bet $5. If that first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So the NFL is going on all day. How about take a look at some live betting or some stuff for Sunday Night Football? Or if you're listening to this on Monday on your commute, Monday Night Football as well. There is tons of options for you on FanDuel. Quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your football watching experience. So you're ready to go. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet today. And a word from our friends at Square. This episode's brought to you by Square, your favorite neighborhood spots. They run on Square. There are certain businesses that truly make the neighborhood feel like home, whether it's a local sports bar packed on game days, the coffee shop that knows your order by heart, the corner deli that's been serving your community for decades. These are the places that bring people together. When the neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. Local spots in every neighborhood come alive Sundays, Saturdays during football season. Everyone's in team colors and the energy is incredible. So how about places like the Mill on game days in Lincoln? That place is jumping. And it's run by Square, the kind of place where you could walk in and everyone knows your name. That business in Lincoln, the Mill in particular, they use Square. So Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/LockedOnCollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. All right, Mitch, now that we've sort of run through the game a little bit, you want to do some like big picture kind of takeaways here from this one? It could be a look ahead or whatever it might be, but like what's your one big thing from this game?
Okay, I got one. I don't know if it's the one big thing, but here's one. Dylan Raiola is a good enough quarterback playing at easily a high enough level with what he's doing in the passing game and him making decisions for Nebraska to be a 9-win team.
I agree with that. I mean, I don't know how you could watch that and not think that. He's got 11 touchdowns and a pick. He's thrown for more than 1,100 yards now. He's still completing an incredibly high rate of his passes. He was 30 for 41 on Saturday. No doubt. And he hung in there, right? He took sacks, but he hung in there. When he went down, it was his offensive line that sort of failed him. So yeah, Dylan has been incredible this year.
I think he was getting mad as the game went on. You could see him frustrated at times later in the game with himself, I think, and he won't say this, but maybe a bit with the protection when Matt Rule talked last week about pass rush, and I don't know, one of his many appearances that he makes in a week. I heard him talking about having a clean pocket and the importance. It's not just sacks. It's about the quarterback's feet, and can he make movements with his feet, or are there defenders all over the ground around his feet grasping at him, which obviously makes it more difficult for that QB to throw. Dylan had some times where he went down because Michigan defenders were rolling around on the ground near his feet, and you saw him get up, Dylan, and be very frustrated with the moment. I thought early in the game in some of those spots he looked a little bit confused or frazzled by that. You saw him make some throws where he wasn't as composed as he needed to be. But as the game went on, he got more comfortable operating in what was not a clean pocket, hardly ever, and he started to hit throws. And so, if that's the guy that you're going to get for the next 8 games, because it's not always going to be a clean pocket. They may not face a pass rush all year. I mean, okay,
Probably
Penn
not.
State,
Probably
yeah,
not.
but yeah, they may not face a pass rush like that all year. And
You know what's funny with Dylan?
yeah,
Like,
still, he's gonna have to find a way to work around some of that pressure.
when it gets dirty around him, like obviously almost that entire game was, most quarterbacks, they speed up, right? Like we saw that with Luke Altmaier last night against Indiana as he was getting absolutely killed. I mean, Indiana
63-10.
Yeah. I mean, he got way sped up, his feet got happy, like, and all of a sudden you're chasing it. Dylan, when he gets pressure and there's some dirt on his uniform, like he slows down. He gets like in a bad way. Like he gets nervous. He gets skittish, I think, and turns down some throws and takes sacks a little bit too easily.
Saw that last year and a little bit in the first half, but I didn't think as much in the second half.
No.
I thought as the game went on, he got more resolved, and that's a change from a year ago. And you could hear it in his voice after the game. He was having none of the like stuff in the post game press conference. I mean, the best example is, hey, Dylan, do you think that this bye week is coming at a good time because it's going to allow you to reflect on this loss and what you guys can do to get better? And you just played a physical game, so you can rest up. Nope, it sucks, he said. It sucks to have the bye positioned right now because now we have to live with this for an extra week. I like it. I love it. I love the edge from the QB. He was mad at the fans. I think unjustifiably so, but whatever. He was mad at the fans for booing at the end of the first half. They weren't booing the players. They were booing Nebraska's conservative approach to not try to get points when after the sack. There was a sack. Nebraska was at the 40-yard line with a minute left. It called timeout at its own 40. You need about 30 yards to get in field goal range. And Matt Rule just said, this isn't worth it. We're going to go to the half, down 7. And the fans booed. And then Biff Poggi bailed him out. But I like that Dylan was pissed off about that. Let him be pissed off. It's good. It shows leadership.
Here's my big one. I think this is way more of a broader view, although I agree with you completely on what Dylan did. He was a grinder and a warrior out there yesterday. So I thought I build this game as a truth game. I thought it was a truth game, right? You get to see the truth. What are you? How far are you along? And the truth is that you actually, from this perspective, you actually played well enough, obviously not to win the game, but for us to actually see whether you are good enough or not. And so the truth is that you see these cracks. Nebraska's deficient at tackle and they're small up front on defense, and the run game is an issue, but that, right? It's not like coming from these different places. So I think it's a pretty good indication for me, even though it's a negative result. It's a pretty good indication that Nebraska is past this other thing, this mental thing. Nebraska got beat. I can live with that. But it did not beat itself.
Right. It wasn't Nebraska's self-inflicted mistakes that caused it to lose this game. And I don't care about the running out of the bounds in the back of the end zone. That's a self-inflicted mistake. Every team's going to have one or two of those in a game. You can't play perfect. And they still got 3 points on that possession. Like, it's 4 points. You lost by 3. So I get it. You can boil it down to that, but that's not the thing.
If your takeaway is that it's the same old, I just couldn't disagree with you more. Like it's okay to say Nebraska's not good enough yet, but they did not beat themselves in this game. That has been the constant through line in all of these crap losses over the last several years. They always find a way to beat themselves. I don't believe Nebraska beat themselves. I believe they were beat by a better team than them. That's its own problem, but you can work with that. You can deal with that.
You're going to have to figure out a way to protect Dylan better. That's the thing. I mean, you may not face a pass rush like Michigan's, maybe once, maybe no more times this year, but they're going to have to find a way to protect him better, because if Michigan can get to him 7 times, then Iowa can probably get to him 4 or 5 times, and USC can get to him with the athletes that they have a few times if they bring the heat. So that can't be the Achilles heel for Nebraska on offense, to have Dylan getting hit over and over and over, because it's going to result in negatives that probably go beyond what we saw on Saturday.
They got to keep people honest with a run game. That's where it starts for me. Otherwise, those guys, especially those super athletic rush ends, Michigan, I mean, they're going to pin their ears back. They weren't even in a stance. I mean, they were in track stance. They were like, I'm going. See you later. I'm gonna put my head down and go around these guys. And that's exactly what they did.
Two more guys. We'll go a little bit over here, but two more for Nebraska who I think are bright spots. Deshaun McCullough, you saw great athleticism from him coming around the edge in run support and in pass rush. He had big plays, TFLs against Bryce Underwood, a sack, and then a big stop in the backfield against Justice Haynes as well. Like, he's getting more comfortable. The big thing with McCullough coming into the season at Nebraska after a long career at Oklahoma and Indiana was get him in a place where he can be consistent and comfortable, and just let's see what he can do. And you're starting to see that now 3-4 games into the year.
Yeah, that's a good one for sure. We're going to pick another guy on defense, or you want to go offense?
I'm going special teams. Archie was they brought out the weapon, and
Archie was a weapon.
He was good.
He was
49.3 yard average on 4 punts. You saw him roll to his left. You saw him kick a traditional punt. He was backed up in his own end zone or near his own end zone on 3 of the 4 punts, and he didn't allow any return yards. He was able to kick it out of bounds, roll it out of bounds. Always had a good bounce on his punts. Like, he bailed Nebraska out a few times. So that's a freshman right there. And in his first game at Memorial Stadium, apologies to the victory formation from the Houston Christian game, but his first game out there as a punter, and he delivered.
Yeah, he was awesome.
Go.
He was really good. I thought Shavers popped on defense. He was out of position a couple times or late on a couple plays, but I thought he popped and made a couple extra plays as well. And then the easy
obviously
one,
Barney,
easy one on offense is Barney, who was pretty dynamic. He still fell down on one of those. I was like, why?
He did fall on a punt return.
Oh my goodness, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this guy has a gravitational pull that is to the earth. I don't get it.
He caught the punt at the 3 yard line at the start of the third quarter after Nebraska forced Michigan to punt, and it was a great punt, and he needed to let that go. And he got tackled at the 2, which started kind of a downhill series of bad events in the third quarter, which was a 10-0 Michigan quarter. And he came up a little bit lame when he walked off the field after that. So that was a really difficult turn of events there, because if he just lets the ball go, then I think he's got something with an ankle that maybe goes all the way back to the Cincinnati game. Probably it got aggravated on that ill-fated that poor decision to catch the punt at the 3.
Yeah, and then they got Herbert going a little bit too, caught the touchdown.
Yeah,
little Heine action. So that was good. And yeah, you still need a little bit more from those other running backs and that offensive line. We'll see. But mostly, I will say this: like, I thought the interior of the offensive line, Rocco and Evans and Lutovsky are fine. It's just those tackles. It's a problem. Against that team in particular. We'll see.
Yeah, Lutovsky caught a pass.
That's right. Good job by him too, because you never know if they're going to call that thing a fumble or not, and ultimately they end up losing a bunch of yards on it. But
yeah, that was basically the 8th sack that wasn't a sack on that one. So okay, so we are going to change up the schedule a little bit this week with it being a bye for Nebraska. Matt Rule's going to talk on Monday at around his normal time, late morning, and the next pod from us will be after Matt Rule talks. So look for that late in the day on Monday. Let this pod take you through the first part of Monday, all of our reaction. We'll be back with you after Matt Rule talks at his weekly press conference. That's the end of media availability for the Huskers during the week before they get ready for Michigan State next week, and we'll resume a normal schedule on Tuesday or Wednesday, somewhere around that range.
Okay. That's
right now. Yeah, that's it. Thanks for joining us. It's another big moment for Locked On college football fans. Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside Gary Patterson, Jesse Holly, and Locked On's local experts. You could find me on that show, I think, with a brief a brief analysis before Nebraska played Michigan last Thursday. I sent in a video. It was there. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch college football kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV.